Welcome to The Explainer. When a family moves to a new country, what happens to their original language? Does it just fade away? Or does it stick around for generations? Well, today, we're diving into the surprisingly fast journey of how languages shift for immigrants.
Okay, let's just get right to the single biggest takeaway from all the research. For most immigrant groups, the switch to the new national language, it happens fast. We're talking within just 2 generations, for the most part.
But, it's not like flipping a switch. The real story is way more complex. It's influenced by, well, everything, from who you marry to the neighborhood you live in. So what are the things that can actually speed this whole process up or slow it way down?
All right, so before we get any deeper, we've got to get 2 key ideas straight. Ability versus preference. They might sound kind of similar, but trust me, in this conversation, they are worlds apart.
First up, you've got what's called linguistic integration. The easiest way to think about this is just ability. Can you speak the new language well enough to get a job, talk to a doctor, or help your kids out with their homework? If yes, that's integration.
And then, on the other hand, you have linguistic assimilation. Now, this isn't about ability, it's all about preference. This is when that new language stops being just a tool you use outside and it becomes the main language of your home, the one you actually choose to speak with your family.
And this is the really crucial part, right? Someone can be perfectly integrated, speaking the new language flawlessly at their job, but not be assimilated at all because they choose to keep their native language alive and well at home. Getting that difference is the key to understanding everything else we're going to talk about.
Okay, so now that we've got our terms straight, let's get into the interesting stuff. What actually affects how fast or slow this whole language journey is?
Well, the research points to a few major things, but they all really boil down to one central idea. How much deep, meaningful interaction do immigrants have with the native-born population? And we're not just talking about saying hello at the store. We're talking about real friendships, who you work with, even your religious community. But out of all of those factors, maybe the biggest game changer, the most powerful accelerator of them all, is who you decide to build a life with. Okay, now this slide, wow, it really tells the story. Just look at the numbers for second-generation immigrants. For Christians or non-religious folks, if they're in a mixed marriage, a whopping 93% of their kids speak the national language at home. Compare that to 76% for couples from the same background. And for Muslims, the jump is even more dramatic. It goes from 53% all the way up to 82%. That's huge. And yeah, religion itself is a big factor here. What the research seems to suggest is that when you have a really tight-knit religious community, it can sometimes mean fewer deep social connections, like marriage outside of that group. And that, in turn, can slow down the language shift. But of course, these trends don't look the same everywhere. So let's see how this all plays out when we compare what's happening in Europe versus the United States.
So take France. Their whole national philosophy is really about creating a single, unified French identity. And it seems like that cultural pressure really puts the language shift into overdrive.
And the numbers really back this up. It's pretty amazing, actually. Only 16% of second-generation Muslims in France don't speak French at home. That's an incredibly fast change.
Okay, but now let's hop over to Germany, where we see a totally different picture. The pace of this linguistic assimilation, it's noticeably slower. So in Germany, that same number, the percentage of second-generation Muslims who don't speak the national language at home, it jumps all the way to 36%. Think about that. That is more than double the rate we just saw in France. All right, now let's cross the Atlantic to the United States. And here, well, that whole melting pot idea seems to be incredibly powerful when it comes to language. Assimilation happens really, really fast. Just look at this. It's kind of staggering. In the second generation, almost 3/4, 73% already prefer speaking English. But then look at the third generation. It's a nearly complete switch. A massive 97% prefer English. By that point, for the vast majority, the original family language is pretty much gone from daily life at home.
Okay, so we've looked at the trends, we've seen what drives them. But so what? What's the real-world impact of all this? Why does it actually matter how quickly the first generation in particular picks up the new language?
Well, it really all boils down to one simple, powerful word: opportunity. The research is crystal clear on this. For first-generation immigrants, getting a good handle on the national language is a direct line to a better economic future.
Think about it.
Without being fluent in the national language, the doors to college, to better paying careers, a lot of those doors just stay shut. And this can trap families in a cycle of low-wage work, which doesn't just affect them, it limits the economic mobility for their kids and even their grandkids.
And so, this all leaves us with a really big, and honestly, a pretty tough question. In our world of constant global migration, what's the right balance? How do you preserve a beautiful cultural heritage, your language, while also embracing a new one for the sake of economic success? The data shows us what's happening, but finding that perfect balance, well, that's a personal journey for every single immigrant family, and it's a huge challenge for every nation.